America's #1 show on pop culture and politics. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day for intense, sometimes polarizing debate on issues of war. The war in Afghanistan. Rising chorus demanding that we withdraw immediately. The House voted yesterday to provide money that our troops need to just survive in the field. But there are increasing Democratic voices for instant American withdrawal. Meanwhile, big news on another war here domestically, the war over illegal immigration. You have probably heard that Judge Susan Bolton, a federal district court judge, has not thrown out the Arizona law. What she has done is put it on hold. Now, interestingly, on both of these issues, there's one guy who is at the forefront of representing the people of the United States concerning the future of the war on terror and also the immigration issue that has polarized so many people across the country. His name is John McCain. You might know him as the senior senator from Arizona, the last Republican presidential nominee. Senator McCain, thanks for joining us on a busy and important day.
Thank you, Michael. There's a very great deal going on, as you well know. Could I just make a comment about this leakage, WikiLeaks, which is really, one, of course, illegal, but two, it's my understanding now that many of these documents that were leaked identify certain Afghans who were cooperating and assisting the United States. What they have done by revealing that is put these people's lives at risk, not to mention the reluctance that people in the future might have for fear of being exposed as helping the United States clandestinely. And so this is really an incredibly bad. I'm not using the word treason, but certainly in clear violation of our laws. And one additional point: we need to have hearings and investigate how people get access, like this private first class, that is just been charged. We've got to look at this whole issue of the security of classified material on the internet. What I mean?
If that private has been guilty of releasing this volume of classified material, shouldn't he go away for the rest of his life?
Oh, I would think so. But the WikiLeaks thing is they're saying they're not sure who gave it to them, right? And I've got beachfront property in Arizona for you. But I think that the issue here too is that before the days of the internet, we would have limited numbers of copies of classified material. It would be passed from one person to another under a signature. In other words, we were able to, there were still leaks and there were spies and all that, but generally speaking, classified material was pretty well under control. Now, apparently, a private first class can have access to, and by the way, it was dictated on, quote, need to know. In other words, they gave this information only to people who had the need to know in the performance of their duties. Apparently, now, our cyber situation is such that people can hack into it or get access to tens of hundreds of thousands of documents. That's the larger issue here.
I know you've spoken to General Mattis, the new commander at CENTCOM. Is he assured you that this kind of thing is going to stop, or we're going to try to get better about it?
I think General Mattis is deeply concerned about it. He did say that in one respect it's not new information, a lot of it isn't. We knew that there were very significant difficulties and that things were not, the war was going in the wrong direction. But I think he's also deeply concerned about this compromise of individuals who might have been and may still be to this day working with us, although I guess the documents stopped sometime in 2006, I believe. I'm not sure what year.
The whole thing is reminiscent, what you're saying now, Senator, to the horrible case of Philip Agee, who was a CIA guy who outed a number of American assets, and those people were killed. There were people
they were
who
murdered.
died.
Yeah, in the days of the Soviet Union, yes, indeed.
And the prospect that there may be similar losses over this thing is horrifying. Speaking of horrifying, there are a lot of Americans who are horrified that Judge Susan Bolton, a Clinton appointee, has put on hold. She hasn't ruled as unconstitutional. She has put on hold the enforcement of the new Arizona immigration law, SB 1070. Was supposed to go into effect tomorrow. Now, most of its key provisions will not go into effect. You've been a supporter of this law.
Oh, yeah. It was bred out of the frustration of the federal government to carry out its responsibilities to get our border secured. And this is a national security issue when you look at the activities of the drug cartels. I mean, it can't be viewed as anything else. And apparently now the federal judge has ruled that because the federal government has failed to carry out its responsibilities of securing our borders, she is prohibiting the government of the state of Arizona from doing so. A paradoxical and contrary position that I find hard to understand. And basically, in her reading, and I have only done the first couple of readings of it, that what she's saying is that that because we are going to ask people to prove their immigration status, if there is reasonable suspicion to do so, then that would place a greater burden on the federal government to enforce our laws. It is already a federal law that a person who is legally in our country and is not a citizen have papers and identification with them at all times. So she is saying that they imposed a burden on the federal agency's resources that impede the agency's function. I thought the agency's function was to secure our border and the lives of our citizens. So I'm confident that the state of Arizona will challenge. Unfortunately, it will go to the Ninth Circuit, which is not known for its strict interpretation of the Constitution. And but then I think we'll see it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Wow. And but apparently, as I understand Judge Bolton's ruling today, and like you, I've just been trying to read it over very quickly. Mm-hmm. What this means is that until it is resolved by the Supreme Court, the new law won't be enforced.
Well, I think that's my understanding. Yes, unless the Ninth Circuit removes the stays, obviously. And so
here's my question, Senator, is that one of the things apparently Judge Bolton was concerned about was the idea that apprehending people who were in the country illegally, they can only be deported. They can't actually be deported by the state of Arizona. They can only be deported by the federal government. And there's no way that the state of Arizona can force the Obama administration to actually deport people. The question is, what are all these folks going to stay in that big new prison facilities provided by Sheriff Arpaio?
You know, I don't know what the implications here are, whether that means that the federal government would not take custody of these people and then the state would let them go, or whether you have to try to convince the federal government that the people who are here illegally have committed additional crimes. Frankly, I think that has to be sorted out. But what it really does is say that because the federal government hasn't carried out its responsibilities, and clearly they are a federal responsibility to secure our border, therefore we're not going to allow the state of Arizona to fulfill some of that responsibility. I mean, it's bizarre is probably one of the more appropriate adjectives or adverbs, depending on how you want to phrase it.
Well, the whole situation, people were planning to invade Arizona and commit acts of civil disobedience. People from labor unions. Why are labor unions involved in opposing the Arizona law? You'd kind of wonder, given the fact that some of the main people concerned about illegal immigration are working Americans who are finding it tough to get jobs.
Yeah, but one of the major unions is the SEIU, as you know, who have unionized many in the tourist industry and service employees, and many of them, of course, are not here legally, and they want to have them declared legal so that they could recruit them into unions.
All right, when we come
As you know, they have opposed a temporary legal worker program, a legal temporary worker program. They oppose that adamantly, and were successful in basically killing the proposal some years ago.
And that's what we desperately need. When we come back with Senator John McCain, I want to talk a little bit about the Afghan war. We will also take your phone calls, 1-800-955-1776. What happens if we do what a lot of Democrats are calling for, leave Afghanistan right away? Would there be... 21 minutes after the hour on the Michael Medved Show. One of the things that I admire so much about Senator John McCain, and the way, by the way, that he won the Republican nomination for the presidency with virtually no money, because he didn't have any money at the beginning of the campaign. He just went around and talked to people, took their questions, went to town hall meeting after town hall meeting in the state of New Hampshire, and brought his then faltering campaign back from nowhere to become the Republican nominee. He's also willing to take your calls, which not all politicians are when they come on the Michael Medved Show.
I'm glad to. I'm doing several town hall meetings in Arizona over the weekend as well.
People won't be at all passionate about the immigration issue in Arizona, really?
Not at all. I'm sure we'll have a very calm discussion.
as always. Okay, very quickly on calm discussion, then we'll go directly to our callers. Okay. What do you say to people who say that we will save American lives and we will save American money if we just bring our combat troops home from Afghanistan? We don't need 100,000 troops there. We don't need 20,000 troops there. It's the graveyard of empires. Let's come home. What's the response?
Obviously, we can't forget where the attacks of 9/11 began, and we cannot allow Afghanistan to return to a base of attacks against the United States. Every expert that I know believe the Taliban and Al-Qaeda would work together if they regained their power. And I would also like to point out to human rights activists, the plight of women as well as other citizens under a Taliban regime is unspeakable. And we really cannot allow that country to return to that kind of rule. It flies in the face of everything we stand for and believe in. And we can succeed, but the big problem I have is the president announcing a date for withdrawal. It has harmed us. It has harmed us, our ability to succeed there enormously. And all the president has to do is come out with a statement saying flat out, we want to leave in the middle of middle of next year, but it depends on conditions on the ground. That's all he has to say, and he won't say it.
Let's go to our callers for Senator John McCain, senior senator from Arizona. Dan in Phoenix, you're on the Michael Medved Show with your senior senator, John McCain.
Hi, Dan. Hello, Dan.
Yes, we're trying to get Dan to... There he is. Dan, here he is. Okay, this was a technical malfunction. Dan, you're on.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Senator McCain, how's it going?
How hot is it?
Thanks for taking my call. I just kind of want to go back to what Michael Medved had asked you in regards to the illegal immigration issue and where these immigrants are going to be, what's going to be done with them. Are they going to be deported? And you kind of said that you kind of, I don't know if you danced around with it or danced around with the question, but
in what respect?
In respect to, I'm sure you've read the bill, correct? I can make that assumption that you read the bill.
Yep.
And so you would probably have some information on, or you'd be spun up on what's actually going to happen to these. Are these immigrants going to be deported? Or are they going to be kept in a
that's the question. As I mentioned earlier, and I don't know how I dance around it. If the state officials are not allowed to carry out the responsibilities that the federal government is obviously not doing, then what is going to happen? Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is Dan still on there?
Yeah.
Anyway, So then apparently what's going to happen is that there's not going to be the enforcement of federal law because the federal judges said, quote, will divert asset resources from the federal government's other responsibilities and priorities. I thought securing our border and making sure that people who are not in our country illegally are not there was a federal responsibility, and now they're not allowing the state to do what the federal government has failed to do. Is that explanation enough for you, Dan?
Well, I think, Senator, one of the problems that Judge Bolton found with the law is that it's unconstitutionally vague, or could be unconstitutionally vague, in terms of sort of indeterminate incarceration in Arizona for people who are picked up who the federal government declines to deport or doesn't get around to deporting. In other words, it's just a question, are you going to hold these people in some kind of prison camp for years, for months? How long?
Well, the way the system is designed to work, and there are working agreements between federal and local governments, which we should expand and implement, is that they're turned over to the federal government, and they are, at times, in the case of Operation Streamline, incarcerated for 15, 30, 60 days. We found that to be a great deterrent from people who are repeated crossers. So the way the system should work is that the state of Arizona is enforcing federal law by with reasonable suspicion, twice, not once but twice, reasonable suspicion, not racially profiling, not going out and randomly and haphazardly accosting people, that to determine their status, which, by the way, by federal law, if they're in this country legally but not citizens, they have to carry identification. If someone is stopped for driving erratically, the first thing the policeman does is ask for their driver's license. So it's very clear to me that if the federal government was carrying out its responsibilities and properly funded, then these people were apprehended by local sheriffs or police, then they are turned over to them, and they are then either deported or, in some cases, Operation Streamline, which has worked very effectively. That's how it should work.
Let's go to Mike in El Segundo, California. Mike, you're on the Michael Medved Show with Senator John McCain.
Hello, Mike.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Senator McCain. If Iran is allowed to develop nuclear weapons, then that will make them somewhat of a regional superpower in the area. They will have much more respect and influence and blackmail power over the Arab countries in the region, as well as over Europe, whom they will be able to attack with nuclear weapons. And they may be able to reach out, attack the U.S. I'm wondering, Senator McCain, what are you doing personally, and what is the Republican Party doing to pressure President Obama and the Democrats to take out Iran's nuclear capability before it is fully developed? Because otherwise, if they do develop it, they will completely undermine our war on terrorism and will be much worse off and much graver danger.
Great question, Mike. Senator?
It's a great question, Mike, and also, by the way, the entire region will go nuclear, and the great threat, of course, is the Iranians supplying one of these terrorist organizations, such as Hezbollah, with a weapon which could a direct threat to the existence of the State of Israel, which they are committed to wiping out. The sanctions have to continue. They even need to be tougher. We have to make it very clear to the Iranians that there will reach a point where, at least in our view, that they pose a threat to the security in the region. And then, of course, we have to determine what our options are at that point. For me to say on August 1st we're going to threaten to bomb or destroy Iranian capabilities is not my responsibility or appropriate to do so. But let me just say this. This is why we elect presidents. This is a decision for the President of the United States, and the Congress has to be part of that decision once it's made.
Senator McCain, thank you for your service. Thank you for joining us on the air. We will continue the conversation on Afghanistan, Arizona, and more coming up.
The Michael Medved Show. MichaelMedved.com.